core values to valued culture. Here is your host, Will Scott, interviewing another CEO about leading culture in their company.
Okay, listeners, what a great guest we have today. Welcome to another Culture Czars interview where we talk to executives that care about corporate culture. We call this series From Core Values to Valued Culture, and our purpose is to help executives and entrepreneurs create environments where employees thrive so that they can be the best that they can be. We want employees to love where they work and why they work so that they are loyal, fulfilled, and productive. My guest today is Claude Silver, Chief Heart Officer and Czar of Culture at VaynerMedia. And Claude, just a little bit about you that I thought was interesting from what I was able to read. And I understand that it's particularly interesting how you approach your role there at VaynerMedia. You say that I work for 800 humans and I'm in touch with the heartbeat of every single person in the company. So here we are with the Chief Heart Officer in touch with the heartbeat of every single person. My role is to infuse the agency with empathy. It's my purpose. I'm just going to read one more little bit and then we'll turn it over to you. Culture is a texture. It's a vibe, a feel. And I want to talk more about the feelings part. And culture is alive. It's definitely not one or two dimensional. I think culture is very three-dimensional. It's the heartbeat for you, Claude. And let's start there. Tell me, what is the culture like at VaynerMedia?
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Will. So our culture is one of camaraderie. It's one of friendliness and warmth. It's one of healthy competition, curiosity, and without a doubt, a collaborative and entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay. And did it just get that way, or did you and Gary deliberately nurture it that way?
Well, Gary blessed this culture a long time ago, so 10 and a half years ago, and he blessed it from the top. And actually at that point, he said that we would be a family-first company. And as the years have gone by, we've really changed that into more of a friendly-first company, if you will, because more and more people now have families, actually, and they want to come to work and they want to have close relationships, of course, but they also want to respect the fact that they do have their own families. So what Gary did was he blessed it, and it is really up to every single person to cultivate and be responsible for the culture on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis. And that's in every office. And every office has a slightly nuanced culture based on the geography, population, and what they're doing there, which might not be the exact same thing as the headquarters might be doing.
Yeah. Well, and tell us a bit about the company now, the scale of things and the growth and the number of offices, and just give us that introduction.
Yeah, perfect. So we are now at about 810. We call ourselves now VaynerX, which is a holding company, has become a holding company for VaynerMedia, for the Gallery Media Group, for Vayner Speakers, Vayner Sports, a number of other smaller companies and entities that we have. I believe now, let's see, Singapore has now been up and running for 3 months. London is up and running 4 years. Los Angeles, Chattanooga, New York. And New York obviously is our biggest mecca here. We've got over 600 people.
Okay, yeah. Well, congratulations. I know that's been quite a growth in 10 years.
Yeah, it's been amazing. When I started 5.5 years ago, I was employee 389. So we've doubled in size now. It's pretty great.
Okay. Well, you know, one of the things that my clients often ask is, my company's growing fast. How do I maintain the culture that we have now as we keep adding people and growing quickly? What have you kind of learned to do at VaynerMedia during that growth to make sure that you are maintaining that culture you had when you were only 389 employees?
Yeah, really, we're a high-touch culture, and that means I continue to meet with every employee. Gary meets with every employee. I have a wonderful team that are not only educated in the way I see creating culture and culture champions and heart, quite frankly. But they are also very gifted in the world of HR business partnership. And so they have their own accounts and departments that they look after. And so they're able to scale, myself as well. And we've got incredible department leads and a senior leadership team that's also able to scale. But everything we do is this. It's human to human relationships, which is really, for me, the name of the game. I don't think that anything, I don't believe that what we're doing is something that we can replicate on with AI at the moment. So it's very high touch, and we have performance management systems, and we do annual reviews, we do stay interviews, we do 90-day reviews. We have a lot of contact with our people here.
So a pretty big investment time-wise to have all those programs, right? And obviously you're doing that because you think the people are important, and they end up feeling important that way, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, people that come in today, the meetings I've had have ranged from everything from some serious mental health issues to someone who was told by their manager for the past 6 months that they should get time with me and get to know me. Someone else came in who said, I want to know people here. Can you introduce me to your top 10 people? I've had phone calls with Los Angeles today. I've had Slacks with London. And so it is high touch, and it is a time commitment, but it's the only way I would choose to spend my time now. So.
Yeah, that's great. You talk about high touch, and here's a story that sort of confirms that about your CEO. Right before I came into this podcast, I'm at a session here with the Entrepreneurs Organization in Chicago, and I was mentioning this podcast that was upcoming, Claude, and somebody said that they had seen Gary speak before he was quite the mega name that he is today. I think they said maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and he was holding a seminar. And he stood at the door and shook the hand of every single attendee that came into the seminar. And he shook the hand of them as they left as well, thanking them for coming to his seminar. So that's maybe an example of very high personal touch.
That is. And to this day, he will stop on the sidewalk for anyone that wants to shake his hand and take a picture. He will stop at the Jets game for anyone that wants to stop and shake his hand, or the airport. I've never seen anything like it. And he has set such a wonderful example for me to follow in those footsteps and do it my way. One of the things that Gary wrote about a while ago on LinkedIn was something called the Rickey Henderson effect. Rickey Henderson was a player for the Yankees years and years ago. When Gary was a little kid, he was watching Rickey Henderson in the batter's box warming up to get on, he was on deck to go up to the home plate. And Rickey Henderson winked at him. And Gary immediately became a fan, and a lifelong fan. And I love that. It just goes to show you that when you make someone feel something, you've changed them, you transform them. And that's the business I'm in.
Yes, that wink, another example of the importance of the human touch and how you can connect with somebody. And I feel so often, we're not doing that. We walk by somebody in the office and we're not really connecting. We might say hi. And we often will say, how are you? And of course, every time you ask, how are you? What does somebody say? They say,
fine.
I'm fine. Right? They say, I'm fine. I like to ask, hey, how are you feeling today? And just get a little different answer that way.
Well, it's very funny because my mom, who's a psychotherapist, says, how is your soul? And she said that to me for years, and I've been like, oh my God, my soul. Now we're going,
yeah, that makes you think, doesn't it?
Like, let's just scale that back for a second. How am I feeling is fine. How's my soul? Oh my gosh, that's going real. How long do you have?
Yeah. Yes. I like to tell my clients, this is a Zulu phrase that I like very much. They say, sawubona, meaning I see you. And when they say that, they really are looking into your eyes and almost into your soul, really wanting to know you when they say sawubona. And one of the responses is yebo sawubona, meaning I see you seeing me. So again, it's just that really nice. It's a bit more than the hi, how are you? I'm fine. You know, and yeah,
It's very similar to namaste.
exactly. Yes, it
And
is.
that's a wonderful way to acknowledge someone and someone's presence.
Yes, yes. So, you know, speaking of, I often say that, you know, what is culture? There's all kinds of ways to define it, but one way is it's about how people feel, right, when they're in the workplace.
Yeah.
And of course, we want people to feel. I hope we want people to feel good and feel so that they're going to. I mean, they spend 8 hours of their day there, that they're going to, of course, perform for the company, but also, you know, just if you're feeling good, you like the people you're working with, doesn't everything go better? And so, yeah, strategically, where does culture rank for you and Gary amongst all the other priorities of sales and marketing and, you know, those kind of things?
It's number one. Our people are number one, and our people are what is creating the culture. So thus, in turn, that is also number one. Without a healthy culture and one that is motivated by friendliness and warmth and camaraderie and healthy competition and all of those things I shared, without that, I believe that you fall into the trap of having a culture that is devoid of soul, is one that is based on fear, is one that is based on control and ruling from an ivory tower. So the approach of, it's a very much a people first culture, and it is the most important thing. I would say it's 59%, 51%, and business and profit is 49.
Okay. And so have you defined your culture there with some core values, or how do you do that?
You know, we don't have core values that are hung on the wall. And that's for a reason. I really firmly believe that values need to be embodied and they have to become habitual. So they need to be acted on it. And there's no way in the world that I would expect you to embody compassion or empathy the way I embody compassion or empathy. You know, I think we're hiring people to be very diverse here, and that also means diverse in their way of thinking and their values. While I would like your values to be in a similar postal code, I'm not going to dictate how you see courage. That's just not for me. So we have values that are organic and in flux every now and then, but we have a very strong DNA. We have a very strong culture.
Okay. So how do you go about hiring people for cultural fit, as they say?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I don't use the phrase culture fit. I mean, I don't use the phrase. I think it's one that should be binned, just like soft skills. I don't think it means what it once meant, because why would we want to hire the same? And the idea of fitting in is archaic to me. I think the idea of fitting in means that in order to be a part of, you must be like me. And that's just ridiculous today.
Right.
So as you can tell, I feel strongly that we don't use the word culture fit, but we do use the phrase culture addition.
Okay.
So skill set fit and culture addition is what we're looking for. And while skills are very much commoditized, there's a lot of people that can be data engineers, or a lot of people that can also be client service managers. It is the people and the relationships that make all the difference. So a cultural addition, again, is someone that has values and thoughts that are in our zip code. They are coming with diversity of every shape and size. And they're bringing something new and fresh here. There was a time in which we had a lot of culture fit in those first 3 to 4 years. We were very, very fast-paced growing company, and we had a lot of sameness, which allowed us to get very, very quick. And when I came on and took the role and started crafting what this role is, it was apparent to me that we needed to really change the look and the feel of the floor, both in reality and perception. And in turn, that has enabled us to do better work.
Mm. That's very interesting. So, and how would you say other people could adopt that? So you've got an entrepreneur, and he's growing, his company, and he's at 20 people, going on 50. How would you, help him, or what recommendations do you have for helping him maintain the culture, or assuming that's what he wants to do, I guess?
Yeah. So one of the things that we know is that it is very difficult for a founder to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
As you grow and you get to a certain size. So you can only run the company in your head for so long. You can only be the heart of the company for so long. So in entrusting others to scale you, and entrusting others to be able to walk the same walk you walk, I think is really, really important and valuable. And that means finding people that have similar heartbeats. Again, not the same, but similar. And the wonderful thing that Gary and I have found together is that he believes that I see people in the same way. And we have a belief in people and possibility, and we see the silver lining. And so, it's an honor to carry that torch and be able to scale him, and thus cultivate this culture and spend time with people and take part in strategic decisions that have to do with people and people operations. Mm. So in summary, if you are a founder and your time is being stretched, find others who you trust that can do the jobs for you.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. In fact, that's one of the reasons I call the company Culture Czars, is that I've seen in successful companies, it isn't always the CEO or the leader. In fact, it can't be. That defines and really lives and breathes and sort of demonstrates the culture. You can have a number of people throughout the organization who represent the culture very well, and you can use them for the recruiting and hiring. But it's an interesting question when you're doing that without actually putting a definition on it. So are you guys going more with sort of gut feel and spidey sense?
Well, we have guiding principles, and everyone walks through the guiding principles in their 4-day orientation. So no matter who you are, whatever level, you go through the same 4-day orientation that everyone else does.
Okay. Yeah.
In your first 4 days here, you are getting a deep dive into the secret sauce of what we do, how we do it, how we think, what the journey will be like here, what we anticipate, how we will nurture you, support you, grow, develop you. And in that day, you'll get a deep dive from me or someone on the team on our guiding principles. And they're very, very thorough and in depth. And then you will walk away with that piece of paper as well.
Yeah. So, are you actually doing that as a class? Like, do you have, because you're growing so fast, do you have a certain class start date for your new employees?
Yeah, every other Monday we start.
Yes, okay. In New
York. And then in the other offices, based on, they're much smaller. So based on.
Yeah.
So this week we have, I think, 12 people that started. And day number 2.
Yeah, great. What's an example of one of the guiding principles at VaynerMedia?
Curiosity.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this would reveal things that are confidential, but how would what would I experience under the curiosity training in on day 2 if that's where it lands?
Yeah, it would be day 1 actually, and the things that you would talk about would be curious about other people.
Okay.
Really true. So being multidimensional about things, giving people the benefit of the doubt would fall under that. Curiosity in terms of asking why, asking questions. Being big in the room would fall under that. Not stopping when you're tired. Pushing past that. Those are the things that we will put under the curiosity bucket. And then there are buckets, there's entrepreneur bucket, there's a altruistic bucket. I mean, there's 9 guiding principles that we have spent a lot of time cultivating over and over and over. And just like you would any campaign idea, we've spent just as much time ideating and throwing things out as people would do for the next Budweiser campaign.
Yeah, I see. So fascinating. Guiding principles. So that's kind of something that you help folks, I guess, to really help them integrate with the culture at VaynerMedia. Are you using those at all in the interviewing process too, or not?
Well, so in the interviewing process, again, we're interviewing for cultural addition, and so we ask a lot of open-ended questions, along with questions to see if we can do the job, of course. Yeah. One of the things we removed from the job descriptions and the requirements is a need for a bachelor's degree. And that's something I'm very proud of, because I think that boxes people in.
Yeah.
And certainly in this day and age, when you have the 15-year-old who's, making thousands of dollars hacking something on YouTube, we want that person. We want people that are choosing to educate themselves in the school of life, very much so. So anyway, back to the interview question, we do a very, very thorough interview training, which is different if you're on the creative team than if you're on the media team. Because one is very analytical and numerical, and one is thinking outside the box and really stretching your imagination and using a lot of inspiration. So open-ended questions are the way that I feel we can find the EQ that we're looking for.
Yes.
Those types of questions. Tell me a time when, and tell me a time when you failed, and what was that like? Tell me a time when you feel like you let your team down. What was that like? Tell me a time when you celebrated a little win, and why. Those types of things.
That's very cool. And then what about the unhiring process? Is that something that VaynerMedia does a little differently too?
The
I call it unhiring. I don't like to call it firing.
We do, and we have something called the alumni program here. And the alumni program looks like this. We get a lot of inbound requests from other companies or CMOs to see if we have anyone that would be a great account director or a great social media manager at their company. Mm-hmm. So when it is time to do an unhiring with someone, we already have a good idea of where we could get them jump started based on their skill set and their priorities in life, perhaps. Maybe they don't want to commute into New York City every day.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to stay up in Westchester. And so this is something that we have maybe 1 to 3 options and ideas for them. They will also get a time with Gary afterwards, where he might say to them, hey, I know you're really interested in video. Why don't I call people up at Vox or BuzzFeed or so forth and so on, or go through LinkedIn and find me 5 jobs that you're interested in and why. Mm-hmm. So we want to set people up to succeed where they might not be A players here. They're going to be an A player someplace else. Mm-hmm. And that's really, we want to keep people in this ecosystem for as long as we possibly can. And that the ecosystem is that of both Gary, but also Vayner. We're proud of the people that come through our door, and just because it doesn't work out doesn't mean that you're not valued. You're not a worthy person. Of course.
Yeah. And I guess an observation I would make about Gary and perhaps other employees, but of course he's the most obvious example, is just how he uses social media and how he's clearly just very transparent. I mean, he's totally the same guy, isn't he? Whether he's on camera in a tube in New York spontaneously or on stage, I guess he's the same guy, and he just lives himself. He doesn't seem to package himself or constrain himself at all. And I think that must be a very free way to live. I think so many people are not able to live quite that freely, where they are just who they are, wherever they are, and are showing their authentic self.
Yeah, he's very, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And that's one of the greatest pleasures, I would say, of working with him, because you don't have to guess. You're not guessing. He just is. And, there also is a very big difference, though, between the brand Gary Vee and the man Gary Vaynerchuk.
But what do you mean by that?
So who you might see him on social, which is, using the F-bomb or doing this or, having a rant about this or that. That's a brand. That's Gary Vee.
Okay.
I work for Gary Vaynerchuk, very much the operating CEO, who is just as down to earth as this conversation is, if not more. So, and people do get to see that on his videos,
Yes.
But it's really refreshing after working in the corporate world, in the corporate agencies or holding company agencies for so long, to have someone as WYSIWYG as him, as transparent as him. You don't have to guess. And if there's something he says and I don't understand, I just literally say, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it is very refreshing. And, one of the things that I can't help but be interested in is when some company has some kind of a scandal, and there's so many of them. I think, I wonder what their core values are or how they define their culture, and I kind of know what it's going to say before I get there. But sure enough, it says about for example, that there's one company where they had a walkout recently, and it was about sexual discrimination, basically. And how they were handling, female executives that were trying to bring this issue up. And their core values were saying things like, one of them was together, and they explained this core value together as being about equality and all this sort of thing. And I just think that's, just let's call bullshit on that. Companies who are saying they're one thing and doing something different. And, people know it. So, and I just think it is refreshing, as you say, and it must be also very freeing just to be who you are, corporately and as an individual, rather than trying to say we're this, but actually not paying any attention to that and kind of doing something different.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that goes back to this idea of not wanting to have a sea of sameness here. And the fact that you don't need to be like me to fit into this company. You actually need to be like you.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this company. Fitting in is just a term that I think belongs in the trash now, because it limits a human being.
Yeah.
And that's the antithesis of what we're doing here at VaynerMedia, and it's certainly the antithesis of what my beliefs are.
Yeah. I think I don't think it's necessarily different from what some other companies are doing, where they do have, if they take your curiosity example. I mean, that you're calling it a principle, but I think it also could be considered a value. And you probably do want people. So even though they're very diverse from a point of view of, all the kinds of backgrounds that that are possible, you're still encouraging them to be curious, to foster that value, as it were. Right? So there is a kind of common thread through the diversity that you're embracing, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very clear. Within diversity, you can still have similarity.
Yeah. So you are doing things a little differently, and you also have a lot of clients, don't you? You're working with clients who are across the spectrum, or at least, the organization is. I don't know how much you have time to touch the clients. If you're touching 800 employees on an annual basis, I'm not sure if it's time you have for other things. But so, I like to encourage CEOs. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs of sort of smaller, faster growing companies. And I like to encourage them to think of not just leading a company, but really leading a culture. And I think clearly that's happening where you are. It's not just about the four walls and the employees inside. That culture is expanding, I think, to, upstream to your vendors, downstream to your customers. Is that true?
It's absolutely true. I mean,
yeah.
Or not, it is. So actually, let me rephrase. We value empathy here. We value being kind and making sure that we understand what it's like to be in that person's shoe, to be very trite about the word empathy for a second.
Mhm.
In turn, our job as advertisers is to make sure that we understand the needs of a consumer and to be empathetic to those needs where they might not be our needs. And when you're um, just selling chocolate chip cookies to middle America, well, we're not in middle America, but we need to figure out and understand the sociology and the aches and the pains and the triumphs and the joys of that consumer. And so being empathetic internally, teaching our clients to see their consumers as more empathetic rather than how many packs are you going to buy off Walmart store. That takes some time.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to not only say the proof's in the pudding, we have to be able to walk that talk and walk that walk. So it does transfer down. And seeing notes, I oftentimes see notes that clients will write about our people, which is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And in fact, I was in London last week and saw a note that one of our, the senior client on an oil and gas company we work with, wrote about a project manager. And I thought, you took the time to write that about this person, which not only has made her day, I'm sure it has made her year. And she value and treasure for a very long time. And in turn, it allowed me to even be more complimentary and, really celebrate that work that she's done. So what goes around comes around, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And those are fabulous stories that are knitting together everything you've been talking about on the podcast here, from curiosity extending to your clients and being curious, therefore, about the market in the Midwest for cookies, even though you're sitting there in New York. There's that curiosity. And you also talked about, and I have this as one of our values at Cultures Ours, is not just the first or obvious answer, and not stopping when you're tired, but peeling back more and digging for, is there a better answer, and keep working at that. And then the tying in with the empathy piece, where empathy is clearly coming from that oil and gas client in the UK as well, where they're feeding that back to your employees. So So again, this idea that culture is not just about the four walls of the organization, but how it extends beyond that.
Yeah, and culture isn't, and this is now old news, but culture isn't about having the ping pong table.
Yeah.
We don't anyway.
Okay.
Making sure that we are looking at our people in a holistic way. So that means, how are we helping them with student debt? Right? That's something we bring in a CPA once a quarter who sits in an office all day and fields questions about anyone's financial health. That's something special. We have someone that comes in once a month and does biometric testing of your BMI, your weight, and all that other, how much water weight are you. We want to treat people as the humans that they are. I mean, there's no other way for me to say that. And recognizing that there is a work-life meld going on right now, and it might be very difficult to go get a physical over at the doctor's office, or get your weight done, or go to a CPA or get your taxes done, or go for a run. So we provide so many benefits here. I mean, we even provide coaching as a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And we partnered with a coaching company that gives a person who signs up for 8 sessions within 4 months of their own life coaching. It is anonymous. I don't know anything about it. Just happy using it.
No, that's very cool, and I completely agree. So I think you said at some point there were human beings, and you talked about feelings, and definitely encouraging, that people to talk about feelings. When I host like strategic offsite sessions for clients, I always put a sort of team health piece in the agenda there, where we just share something personal, a story from our youth or something like that, and that's where the emotions come up, and where people are therefore feeling And those are the most memorable parts of the day, where you've learned something personal that touched your heart, Chief Heart Officer, about someone who you work with every day. And so, yes, encouraging just that to care about people's feelings. Yeah.
I think that's why icebreakers are so much fun.
Yes.
Icebreakers are great. You get to learn something about that person next to you or across the table that you normally wouldn't know. And that creates a connection and a bond. And that connection is the seed of belonging and the seed of building trust with another and building a camaraderie and I feel for you. I feel with you.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Well, look, I think that's a really fabulous place to bring this conversation to a close. I've gone a little bit over on the time, so I thank you for that. But any kind of final thoughts for the listeners about what's something that you've learned and you would wish for other people to share in their organizations if they are taking the role, even with a different title, taking the role of Chief Heart Officer in their organization?
Yeah. So there's two things that come to mind. The first thing is to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Literally learn how to listen in an unbiased, unjudgmental way, and just let whatever that person says just have a life of its own for that moment. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is to remember that, as Gary says, 99% of things don't really matter. So focus on that 1%. The rest is noise.
Yes.
And find out what that 1% of things is. What drives that human being? That's what matters. Not what their fears are. That doesn't matter. What drives them matters.
Okay. Well, Claude, thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of the Culture Czars series of interviews. And for other podcasts on the similar subject, please check out my website, culturezars.com, and you can get this podcast everywhere the podcasts are available. And thank you again, Claude.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at culturezars.com, and we'll see you next time.